to the Humans vs. Retirement podcast with financial planner and retirement specialist Dan Haylett. In this podcast, Dan explores ways to help you overcome the behavioural, emotional and financial challenges of life after work. Join Dan for the journey where he will explore how our wonderful human brain will naturally fight against what it takes to live a happy, healthy and wealthy retirement. Dan will draw on years of expertise, experience and expert guests to solve the behavioural, emotional and financial challenges of life after work. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Humans vs. Retirement podcast. I'm your host, Dan Haylett. So this is the 12th and final episode of season 1 of the Humans vs. Retirement podcast. And it's going to be a little bit different. It's just me. I'm going to be flying solo, trying to distill and summarise and pull out all of the key points over the last 11 most amazing episodes and conversations that I've had the privilege to have on this podcast. So the safety blanket of someone else at the other end of another microphone is not there. So please be easy with me as I try and distill some of these most amazing conversations. Now, don't worry, it's not the final episode. I'm already heads down recording amazing episodes for season 2. And so there's going to be a 4 or 5 week break before I launch season 2. And I'll let you know more about what to expect a bit later on in this episode. But I do want to say right off the bat, a massive thank you to all of you out there that have chosen to listen in to my conversations. I mean, I had no expectations going into this thing whatsoever. So, you know, just one person listening in would have exceeded those. And looking back, really, and over those conversations, I have learned so much. And you know, to look at the stats, to have 3,000 downloads, many ratings and reviews, likes and engagements throughout social media and everything that I've put on there, emails, wonderful feedback, unsolicited feedback from clients and the public and many other people has just been truly mind-blowing. So a massive thank you for that support, and I can't wait to bring season 2 going forward. And really, look, to me, that's a sign that there is absolutely not enough work being done and conversations had on this emotional, behavioural and financial challenges of this man-made thing that called retirement that many people are going into over the coming years. So it only inspires me to do more, to go bigger, and really to create a more meaningful, lasting impact for people at this truly wonderful stage of life. So with all that in mind, let's try and summarise 11 truly wonderful conversations and touch on some of the key points in each one of those conversations that I had. Really look at what surprised me most about all of the conversations and some of the common themes that were present throughout. And then I'm going to go a bit deeper on something that I've been thinking about for the last couple of weeks, and as a result of these conversations. So, look, kicking off episode 1 with my great friend Neil Bage, where we covered off finding new purpose, creating joy, spending money on things that make you happy. Really simple messages that I think do get lost in some of the noise that exists out there. And Neil's background in behavioural science and all of the studies that he's done on the human brain, he's in a great place to understand the challenges behaviourally that many people face in this retirement phase of life. So it was a great way to kick off, and I had such a fun conversation. And that leads on to Dr. Daniel Crosby, who has wrote 2 amazing books, The Behavioural Investor and The Laws of Wealth, that had a big impact on the beginning of my career. And it was a great privilege to interview Dr. Crosby. And I think the overarching message there is that money can buy happiness, but it buys it from a way that we don't think. And it comes on to episode 3 with Dr. Joy Leary, where we talked around the psychology of spending and actually how linking Neil's work on the brain, Daniel's work on behaviours around money, and then Joy's work on the psychology around money. It's really about spending money on experiences, not things. They're the things that give us joy and happiness. And money can buy those experiences. And it doesn't have to be lavish. It doesn't have to be, massively expensive. Find out what gives us purpose. Find out what brings us joy. Money can be spent on those things. Mostly they're experiences, not material things. And I think if people want to spend money, for instance, on a boat, it's not the boat that gives them joy. It's going out on the boat. It's spending time on the boat with people they love and the places they see. So experiences drive our joy, happiness when we're looking to spend our money. That led on to a really great conversation with Abraham Okinsanya on episode 4 of the podcast. And really to kind of the flow of these conversations were really cool, because that got us to a point where Abraham has looked at a lot of the science around spending money and global research about longevity and portfolio return rates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a great episode. Go and have a listen. But the overarching thing really that come off that is that people are far too conservative spending their money in retirement. We worry too much about running out when under most circumstances, people don't run out. Real-time spending falls in retirement. There are things that we can do in later life that helps us cut our cloth accordingly. And what happens there is that actually we end up foregoing the period in our retirement where we could identify purpose, joy, and happiness, and where we have got time and health on our side to go and spend that money on those experiences. And we end up with this pot of cash sitting around in our 80s that we simply are not going to get to, and we're going to end up leaving the wonderful tax man a tip at the end of life. So it was a really, really wonderful start to the podcast, and it all linked in very, very nicely. Episode 5 was just an amazing conversation with my good friend, Brian Portnoy, again, the author of a wonderful book called The Geometry of Wealth. And that book, alongside Daniel's 2 books, has had a massive impact, as I said, on my career. And Brian's work as an author, but also as founder of a wonderful financial well-being company and platform called Shaping Wealth, has led him to create something I think is pretty meaningful to understand. And go back to episode 5, listen to the podcast, go into the show notes and delve further into this and buy The Geometry of Wealth. It's an amazing book. But he talks about the 4 sources of contentment. And really, throughout Brian's work and research into money and money life and retirement, his phrase that he uses is funding contentment. We need to use our money to fund our contentment. But what does contentment mean? How do we feel contented or more contented? And so he's got the 4 C's of contentment, the 4 sources of contentment. 1, connection. 2, control. 3, competence. And 4, context. And really that is kind of saying, look, our social connections and our friends and our friendship circles and who we hang around with and where we hang around is a massive source of contentment. Having control of our own destiny and having autonomy over our own lives gives us contentment. Having competence, mastery over something. I'm still trying to master my golf swing, and once I get there, I will be truly content. But it's a bit away yet. But having mastery over something is massively important for us as human beings. And secondly, context. Putting everything into context from a kind of a larger than life point of view. And this isn't necessarily spiritual, but probably very faith driven. Something's bigger than us. How do we have context in life? How do we give back? How do we create that context where our life is part of something bigger? Just an amazing model. Episode 6 with Polly Johnson-Zalonka. Again, a theme for our conversations on this podcast were with wonderful authors. And Polly has wrote a brilliant book called The Retirement Life Plan. And she's got a website, The Retirement Life Plan, and a coaching company that helps people deal with those non-financial elements of life after work. And one of the real key messages that is in Polly's book and come out of this episode was her model of the 4 anchors of retirement well-being. And again, thinking about how many of us start to think about retirement, we place a numbers first approach on this. It's a let's deal with the numbers first. Let's get comfortable. By the way, you're never going to be comfortable with the numbers. That's another theme that come out of it. Every millionaire wants another million quid. We're never comfortable with numbers, but we try and get comfortable and certain with them and neglect the other bits that actually have probably a bigger impact on our well-being. So Polly's 4 anchors of retirement well-being. Number 1, who are you? Or who you are, sorry. 2, what you do. 3, who is involved. And 4, how you structure it. So just think about this for a second. Who you are has a big impact. What is your, and without spoiling something a bit later on in this episode, what is your identity? Who are you? Who you are? What you do. What you do has a massive impact on your well-being. Think about what you want to do in retirement. Think about what you're retiring to, not what you're retiring from. Who is involved? That social circle links back into Brian's episode around connection. Who is involved in your life in retirement? If there are many people in your circles that don't have the same aspirations or the same interests, then I think, that period of life, we're going to really struggle to build those connections that us as human beings crave for. There's lots of science and research out there about human beings love to live in tribes, and our tribe needs to be 100, 120, 150. There's various different studies, but we like to live in tribes, close circles followed by immediate circles around you, and we like to have a tribe of people around us through different sources. And if our closest tribe is people that we don't connect with, then we need to make sure that we are building a tribe of people that have the same interests as us. And how you structure it's going to be really huge. I think it's how you think about this and structure it. Is it an end or is it a beginning? How you structure the new phase of your life and the opportunities that sit in front of you. Episode 7 was a great conversation with Dr. Thomas Mather, who's in the coalface of behavioural research for Aegon UK, heading up their behavioural insights unit. And he's done some amazing work on something that is really difficult to do, but the research that his team have put into this and the research that he's pulling on from across the globe is suggesting that having a meaningful connection to the future helps us live a purposeful and pleasurable life and retirement. And I say it's hard because I think it's massively challenging for us to delve into our future selves. So if we can do things to create this meaningful connection to the future, which Dr. Mather explores in the episode. So go back and listen to episode 7. If we can have that meaningful connection to the future, if we know where we're heading and we know what our future self looks like, if we know what our future self doesn't want, if we know what our future self does want, if we can put ourselves in the future and look back and kind of go, did I live a good life if I got there? Then having that connection does enhance our purposeful and pleasurable life. So I think it's a really interesting thought process to take into any initial thoughts around retirement planning. Episode 8 was, again, I keep saying wonderful conversation, and it's might be a bit boring for you guys out there listening, but they are truly for me wonderful conversations. An amazing, wonderful conversation with Ashley Kwame, who is a licensed marriage therapist. Her husband's a financial planner in the States. She lives very near Augusta, so I'm planning a trip to go and watch the Masters, and I'm planning to visit her, then watch the Masters. I think that's the right way around. But the conversation was amazing because Ashley brings a really interesting perspective to retirement planning, and one that is that has a background in the marriage and family therapy that she is trained and licensed in. And I think the bottom line is that if you're married or you have a long-term partner and you're entering retirement, your challenges are quite unique. You're going into a period where your relationships will change, and there is probably more work to be done and more conversations to be had than you've had in the last 20, 30 years of marriage. And, without doubt, effective, open, and honest communication between couples is a key ingredient for a happy retirement. I've seen the other end of that scale, and I think that challenges arise when communication isn't open. Challenges arise when it isn't honest. And if you're not having those conversations together about creating a retirement journey that is that fits into both of your plans and aspirations, then there are challenges that will be had really early on to stopping work. So I think it's such a hugely important area. And one for us, when we work, I think I mentioned it in the episode, when we work with anybody, if there is a partner or a spouse that is there, and then there's an insistence that we work with both of them. And if there is an insistence that, that from that person that it's just me and she or he doesn't need to know anything, then we won't work with them, because I think it's so important to actually create this shared vision. If those communication lines aren't open, then it can create huge amounts of conflict going forward. We got to hear an English voice in episode 9, which was a bit of a rarity at the podcast. I'm not biased to any one country, but there are going to be more English sounding voices going forward, as well as my friends from the other side of the pond and others that are coming on the podcast. There's some South African and Australian voices that we'll be hearing going forward. But episode 9 was with author and journalist Celia Dodd. And Celia, again, has wrote this wonderful book called Not Fade Away, How to Thrive in Retirement. And Celia's episode was deep-rooted in thousands of conversations that she had with members of the public about their retirement. And she distilled those conversations and wrote the book around how to not fade away. What does retirement mean? And take those real life stories. And the biggest takeaway for me, that there were many wonderful parts to that conversation in episode 9. But the biggest takeaway for me was that, retirement is not limiting. It's not, or the end. It's not, we're not kind of going, we're going into retirement. We're at an age, we're now a little bit limited, and it feels like we're at the back end of our life, and, we're on the downward slope, and it feels like it's the end. But rather, it's a new beginning. And the interviews that she had with people, and all of the people that were living this most wonderful retirement, had that mindset. It's a mindset of I've got all of the heavy stuff that I didn't like off my back. I'm now free to move forward, probably for the first time in 30, 40 years, and create a life with meaning and purpose that is, that is really truly what I want to do. And I think grasping that opportunity and seeing it as a new beginning is such a key thing for this, for living a happy, healthy and wealthy retirement. And it's just a change of mindset. It's surrounding yourself with people that have a very similar mindset. This is not a stop work, sit in your chair, chill out for 10 years and decline. For the first time in your life, since you were probably a child or in your very early career, there is an opportunity to not answer to anybody and create this life of meaning and purpose that you can then go and live. And I think seeing it as a new, exciting beginning with lots of untraveled roads and opportunities in front of you is going to change your whole perception and your whole mindset around how you're going to live your life in retirement. Episode 10, the wonderful, amazing financial planning legend that is Carl Richards. Carl's wrote books. He is an inspiration of mine in terms of the sketches that I do. And I've talked to him a lot about my sketches. I'm allowed to sketch, and he very much endorses those. So it's there's no issues around some of those. Some of them look a bit similar, but I love the work that he does. But I think with Carl, the most important message was that retirement is more of a human problem than a maths one. I'll say it again. Retirement is more of a human problem than a maths one. I think money is a lightning rod for emotion. We focus too much on the calculator and not enough on the brain and the emotions. And that sentence really, and that phrase really struck a chord with me, because if we start with that, then I think we're going to be in a better position. If we constantly focus on the numbers, then we're not going to focus on the thing that will allow us to execute and live and have this wonderful retirement. And then lastly, released this week is episode 11 with my wonderful, brave, amazing client, Andy Murphy. We spent 50 minutes talking about his career and journey through retirement, a real life transition into retirement. And nothing more to add other than just go listen to this episode. We can listen to experts. And again, 10 amazing conversations with experts around the theory and the research that are put into it. But the bottom line is that actually living it, going through it, understanding it, putting some of the pieces together, and then hearing how he has transitioned into and some of the challenges that himself and Tina went through, his wife, I think is truly inspirational. And there are not many ways that we can look at other people that have gone through that journey and try and learn from. We can maybe learn from our fathers. Our grandfathers had a very, very, very different retirement to what we're having now. Even maybe our fathers had and are having a very different retirement. To have role models, to have inspiration, to have stories, to have ways to link into this real life, modern day retirement transition that is few and far between. So I encourage everybody to listen to episode 11. If you're going to start anywhere, start at 1 and listen through, right? Wonderful. Do that and amazing. But episode 11 is just the tonic that you will need if you are thinking about planning for your retirement in the next few years. So just an amazing episode. I think what surprised me the most about all those 11 conversations that I've just summarized and gone through was actually a reoccurring or reoccurring themes through very different lenses and angles. And there was 4 reoccurring themes that come through. And it was just fascinating as I looked back and looked at those episodes and said, well, you know, is there some common threads here? And there absolutely were. So, common thread number 1 was the identity shift. Identity, I think, come up more than any other word in all of those 11 episodes. I think there is an identity crisis building in this retirement transition. Go back, listen through the podcast, you'll hear it. There are many, many people that have an identity that is wrapped up in their work. They don't have much of an identity outside of work, yet they're going to leave their identity behind and move into something where they have little identity around it. And no work is being done on what that identity at work looks like, the good and the bad of it, how they can create new identities in retirement and what they want to be and who they want to be and what they want to do. And there is somewhat of an identity crisis going on here. So the biggest tip for me, no matter how we look at it or what angle, whether it's through, behavioural research, research into the brain, and going all the way through to Andy's real examples of this in his episode 11, we need to work on our identity. We need to be able to answer the question in retirement, what do you do? I think Andy has a wonderful answer for that. He's listened to those podcast episodes. I have talked to him about it previously, and he's carving out a couple of new identities. So I think it's really important that and go and listen to the episode to hear what he says. It's fascinating. But I do think the tip for me is this great identity crisis and the identity shift that you need to go through, particularly if you've had a long successful career and your identity is wrapped up in your work. The other thing was finding purpose. I think purpose was a very close second to identity. You know, our purpose again is to pull back the duvet and get on the train or commute into work or go to the office or whatever it is. And, you know, the purpose that we have is then to create meaning during our day and during our work. And again, if we're moving away from that purpose, what does finding new purpose mean? What is our purpose in retirement? What is our purpose at 7 o'clock in the morning to pull back the duvet? That might be too early for everybody, right? I don't know. But, if you're an early riser, a bit like me, or if you're a late riser, but what, no matter what time, right? What is your purpose to pull back the duvet in the morning? When you're at work, you have a purpose. Whether you like the purpose or not is another question, but you have a purpose. The key point here is that you need to create a purpose to pull back the duvet, but that purpose can be something that you absolutely love. That is the key point. Find out what brings you joy, find out what is most purposeful to you, and create the purpose to pull back the duvet with vigor at 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe don't go to 11, that's a bit too long, but 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. The other thing was being flexible, the need to understand that a retirement plan, any plan, is wrong the moment that it's created. Being able to be flexible and understand that life moves on, things change, and we need to ensure that although we might have some overarching aspirations and goals and dreams, and a bucket list and things we want to do, that things happen and get in the way and makes us change our plans and planning. Doesn't mean that we can't keep those aspirations in play and on radar. But what it does mean is that we can't get frustrated when life happens. We need to be flexible and adaptable. And if you think about this, right, we've had many years of being flexible and adaptable. We should be good at it. we should have learnt somewhat during our career how to overcome challenges and be flexible and adaptable. And we need to carry that mindset through into retirement. Just because you create this wonderful fancy plan, whether it's a bar chart, an Excel spreadsheet, a list of words on a page, whatever it looks like, that plan won't happen. And I think, you ask any pilot, do you create a flight plan? They will say absolutely. And then you ask them, how often has that flight plan ever gone to plan? And they will say never. There are course corrections that need to happen along the way all the time. Some more challenging and some bigger than others. But there are course corrections that need to happen along the way. So being flexible and having a mindset to make sure that you can course correct along the way is so important. And then lastly, having resilience. I think, it's such a key point. During our retirement, there are going to be many challenges. We're at a phase of our life where, there's a higher chance that we lose loved ones. There's a higher chance that our health fails a little bit. There's a higher chance of many, many different things as we've reached our mid-50s, early 60s, mid-60s, etc. We need to have resilience. And resilience is something that many of us have built up, again, a bit like flexibility. So having resilience is so important to march through the noise and live a wonderful life while time and health is on your side. So recap: identity, purpose, flexibility, and resilience. Go and have a look what those 4 things mean to you. There's one thing I want to touch on and go a bit deeper on before I wrap up, and that is something I've been thinking about over the last week or so. And look, there are many books, many blogs, other resources, this podcast, books that guests on this podcast have written, research papers, etc., that go into detail about the numerous behavioural biases that we have as human beings. And they go into, variety of niche topics such as health and relationships, faith, and of course, money. And so, we can look at all these behavioural biases. Danny Kahneman, Amos Tversky are the fathers of this work. Amos Tversky sadly passed away, but Danny Kahneman, in his 80s, is still going strong and writing work and doing work about this. So, look, just amazing stuff. But in the real world, through all of my reading, all of my research, real world conversations with people on this podcast, and lots of clients that are preparing for retirement, I think I can distill it down to one sentence, and it's something I'm calling the being human problem. And look, this is kind of an overarching thought process, an overarching thing that I think if we can get comfortable with, then we've got the best chance for living a happy, healthy, and wealthy retirement. And this is it. So, every decision or choice we ever make or feeling we have is through the lens of past learning and experiences. It makes perfect sense to us and is rational. Let's just repeat that. Every decision or choice we ever make, now and in the future, or feeling that we have, is because of something that we've learned or experienced in the past. It makes absolute sense to us and is rational. People say that you have irrational thoughts or you're being irrational or, why do you do that? Look, in the moment, our brain, being human, is perfectly rational for us. Makes perfect sense. And if we continue to question our decisions and our choices, and we try and, we keep hearing this word, stop being irrational. And that can be through many phases of, money's a big thing where people are supposedly irrational on, but they're not. They're being human. They've learned this behavior. It was through experiences that they've had that have wired them into doing the things they're doing. It's perfectly rational for people to not spend their money, even if they can spend multiples of what they're spending, because they witness people running out of money and dying poor, right? So every decision or choice we ever make or feeling we have is through the lens of past learning and experiences. It makes perfect sense to us and is rational. It's something I've been thinking about a lot. And I think if I could distill the conversations that I've had over the last 10, 11 weeks, it would be in and around that sentence. So, what to expect from season 2 as I wrap up? You've listened to me for well over half an hour now, which is a bit longer than I wanted. But thank you for still being with me. What to expect from season 2? I cannot wait to bring this to you. I'm in the process of recording episodes. I've already got a number of them in the can and some amazing guests lined up. We've got more experts coming on from both sides of the pond and beyond. We've got more real life client stories as well. I've got some brave clients that want to come on and share their story to help others. I think it's just amazing. We've got different topics and angles such as sleep, health, and faith. And I'm can't wait to bring episode 1 of season 2 to you, or episode 13 of the podcast in total, as I get to have, and I've had a conversation with the host of the #1 retirement podcast in America. I'm pleased with 3,000 downloads. This guy's had over 8 million downloads of his podcast, and he is a true inspiration, a good friend, and it's a wonderful conversation. So I can't wait to bring that to you. So look, if listening to my podcast has helped in your thinking about how to prepare for and live a happy, healthy and wealthy retirement, I'm honoured and privileged that it's had some impact on that. I know that my free retirement toolkit will only help further. So if you've not downloaded it, then I encourage you to do so. Links will be in the show notes. It's a 7-step toolkit around some of those main challenges and thoughts to start to build your own retirement plans. It's got worksheets, it's got quizzes, it's got me on video, which may not be the best thing, but it's got guides and brochures. So it's a wonderful free resource that I think is really, if you haven't downloaded it yet, it's the next stage in how you're going to think about retirement. And lastly, we are looking to work with a further 25 client families this year. So if you are thinking seriously about your retirement and think that we can help in you living a happy, healthy and wealthy retirement, then please reach out. Book in a chat with me via the link in the show notes, and I'll be more than happy to have some initial conversations with you about how we work, what we do, and what that could look like for you. And finally, a massive thank you from me for, from the bottom of my heart. This has been a truly magical experience. One that I cannot wait to bring season 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to you as we march through and bring more stories and more real life examples as we battle this modern day retirement. And I can't wait to bring this to you. So look, a massive thank you from me for tuning into the Humans versus Retirement podcast. If it's had an impact on you, I'd love a review and or a rating. It really helps to spread the word. Drop me a message, send me an email, get in touch. I'd love any of your feedback. So a massive thank you. And until season 2, take care. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Humans versus Retirement podcast. Subscribe to be notified when new episodes become available. We would love to have you along for the journey. If you like what you heard, then we would appreciate you taking a few minutes to leave us a review. And lastly, if you want to explore your retirement plans further, download our free 7-step retirement GPS toolkit linked in the show notes. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of TFP or Dan Haylett. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice, so please always seek the advice of professionals with any questions you may have regarding your retirement.